Welcome to Soundbites, everybody. Kip Ione, founder, Teams of Men here. If you're watching this, you're about to dive into another episode of our weekly Soundbites segments. The Soundbites is either going to give you best clips and sounds from our latest hive mind with like-minded coaches from across the country who are activating our lesson plans and our educations and trying to share and learn best practices for building your players as men in your program. If that's not a hive mind week, you're listening to a Soundbites. It's going to be me discussing ways to activate and weaponize current events from across the country that I think are usable and teachable moments with you and your team, whether it's through Zoom, whether it's in person, whether it's in a share. I'm going to be talking about in those types of sound bites ways to activate what they're seeing in their scrolls, what you're seeing on the news. Either way, welcome back to Sound Bites. But it was absolutely folks that wanted to be allies. So I wanted to be cognizant and not use this accusatory tone of, hey, I'm sure you did this. I really wanted to equip them because I think what we're dealing with is in the moment courage. And in the moment courage is in groups of your own circle. So for these folks, and we ended up getting a lot of great feedback from them in terms of, hey, I know I'm in circles where it's my family, maybe it's coworkers, it's bosses of mine that make comments that I know need to be challenged. And so we tried to frame it as let us show you, and I'll bring this up and stop this share and switch over. Let us give you some tools so you don't go home that night disappointed in yourself just because you hadn't had the reps. And we tried to set the space. I think that's big, Coach Thompson. I know you've got reps in this. Kai, sounds like you guys have a experience having different conversations with the team. I think setting the space is important, but I also think safe is the wrong word. Because if you say it's a safe space, I think you can tone police some folks. I do think you want to tell the kids we're going to try to avoid judging each other, but we're going to definitely challenge ideas that we think are problematic. And in this work, with the being the anti-sexist, anti-violence lens, you do have to challenge ideas. But I think it's important to figure out how you would want to do it. This is what Chris and I settled on, to hopefully allow people to feel comfortable sharing, but also not allow them to think I'm going to be able to say harmful shit and it'll be fine. So I stole that from a presenter. We had Jen Fry, who does a fantastic job educating athletic departments across the country.
The one thing I want to really applaud you on that came out of the last one when we talked about was, and you just said it again, was just accepting the silence, just letting that kind of.
Did you use that?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
No, and it really was the first, and I'd done it before a little bit, but being purposeful about it, how you presented it. I mean, we sat there for a good 75 seconds.
Oh wow, good for you.
And then it opened the floodgates where 3 or 4 other guys that I thought wanted to say something, ended up saying things as well. And so I just, there's real power in
Good
that.
For you, Coach, and reading that moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah. For me, guys, going forward with more of this, what I was bringing today, I'm thinking about the Clippers. And the reason I'm thinking about the Clippers is because the Paul George piece of this, I think the masculinity discussion really rears its head in the mental health part. Because if you remember earlier in the bubble, when he was struggling in the playoffs, even earlier, he, in terms of what, the talking heads will tell you, made the mistake of admitting he was feeling a lot in the bubble. It was hard for him. It was difficult for him. And he made that mistake of admitting that, and the manhood censors went crazy across the country. Oh, Paul George, he's not built for this. And I struggle with the concept because I know we have to find ways to get our guys to rise to the moment. Right? We have to find ways to get them to be able to deal with adversity if we want to be good, or as humans, we're going to have to find a ways. But I also think there's a lot of power in failure and embracing it and learning it. But I know, he's getting murdered today. He was terrible yesterday. That shot that went off the backboard might define him, right? He was so bad, but I struggle knowing what I know. That's a guy that's hurting. But I also I don't want my guys to think Coach Kip says it's okay to be terrible at stuff. Does that make sense? So I don't have the answer. I know Coach Chris and all the rest of our staff were texting back and forth last night about this. What a tank job. But we've all had kids do this. And we've all, so where do we end up on this spectrum of what's our job? Because coddling on one hand, I don't think coddle's the right word, but being there for a kid that happens, I don't know. You guys but that's what I was thinking about last night as I watched that complete meltdown.
Yeah, I just want to say I really liked how you said I got you versus I got this.
Man,
So,
real.
to be honest, I'll probably steal that from you.
For sure, because I stole it from a buddy. I'm going to refer you guys to at the end. Yep.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a similar thing as during quarantine. I've been trying to say I appreciate you instead of saying I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just that small little tweak can go a long way.
Appreciate you listening to this episode of Soundbites from Teams of Men. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're checking us out on social media at teams_men on Twitter. Follow me, Kip Ione, Ioane, on LinkedIn. And if you like what you hear from a Hive Mind segment of these Soundbites, be sure use the links included below in the comments and the descriptions of the video to join us for our next Hive Mind.